Before we start this episode, I'd like to thank my sponsor, Lori Medic of 5 Star Painting of Tulsa. Lori and her husband Trevor are incredible to work with. They are my go-to painting company because they are engaged in every step of the process. From the paint consultation to the follow-up, they ensure your project is beautifully completed in a timely manner, and they are meticulous with every detail so you don't have to be. They are also friendly, knowledgeable, and combine top quality work with high quality products. Other attributes that set 5 Star Painting apart include being family owned, insured, and members of the Tulsa Home Builders Association. So when you have a painting project here in the Tulsa area, 5 Star Painting is the one to call, and they provide free estimates. Connect with them online at 5starpainting.com/Tulsa or give them a call at 918-500-5788. It's amazing how a fresh coat of paint can transform a space. Connect with them today and you will be so glad you did. And now on to the episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast. My name is Nancy Moore, and I am the host of this weekly podcast that provides career and creative inspiration to help you build a passionate and purpose-filled life. You'll hear from guests that will help you tap into your creative potential, pursue a career with passion, and build on your biggest and best resource, yourself. I'm excited to have you join this conversation. I'm so happy you're here. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast. I'm Nancy Moore, the host of this podcast. And today, my guest is someone who is on a mission to make health make sense and even make us laugh along the way, which I absolutely love. Dr. Mary Beth Sawyer, known as Doc MB, brings an incredible blend of expertise and relatability to the world of health education. Her career spans, and this is so interesting to me, insurance sales, healthcare consulting, public health, and rural health research, and higher education, which she's currently in now. So she's really seen the healthcare system from just about every angle. Through her podcast, Healthy Humor, she's helping people better understand their health, navigate the U.S. healthcare system, and take ownership of their well-being using expert insights, real stories, and yes, a little humor along the way. So welcome, Doc MB.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm happy to be here.
Good. I have been wanting to host you on the podcast for a while. We got to meet at a chamber event, and I feel like maybe it was probably a year ago. We got to connect over podcasts, and I've had the pleasure of listening to your podcast and really have enjoyed it. So I'm excited to share that podcast, share you with my listeners. So let's start out by just letting people get to know a little about you and how you started on your journey.
Okay. So I am from the Tulsa area. I was born, raised, educated, and I will probably never leave. I think that my healthcare journey and my interest in it really started when I was a little kid. I just loved helping people and making them feel good. And it was kind of a natural segue into, well, maybe you should consider healthcare or some sort of, giving profession. There's actually a Polaroid photo from, I think I was 2 or 3, and I'm dragging along like clearly an empty briefcase that is probably the same size I was. And I'm wearing a scrub top, and on the Polaroid, it's written, "The doctor will see you now." And ever since I can remember, that photo has been kind of well, of course she's going to go on this path. And then I was pre-med at TU getting a degree in exercise science. I started shadowing physicians, and I didn't really like a lot of the confusion that existed within our system. I'd had a little bit of my own experiences with like some autoimmune stuff, and just seeing how difficult it was on the provider side. I went to one of my professors and I was like, we have to have a way to change this. He quickly became a mentor and then a coworker, and now boss, and now coworker / he's my department chair at TU. but he kind of helps lead me on. That was Dr. Jeff Alderman, who was a palliative care physician, and then also, do you know him?
I love him and his wife too. Yes, they're
Yes.
awesome.
Oh my gosh, they have the best Halloween party every year. They're great.
They do.
Um, so, I really, I wouldn't be where I am right now if it weren't for, that intervention at that point, because I probably would have still either gone to med school or PA school or something like that. But kind of changing my path, I realized that my calling was really more in how do we spread information? How do we increase health literacy? Because that's one of the largest factors in whether or not someone will have good health outcomes in their life is what's their health literacy look like. It's the same thing with regular literacy, right? Like the higher the literacy rate, the better your life outcomes, the better your or more better slash more stable your financial situation will be. And then, I mean, it's the exact same thing with health literacy. The more health literate you are, the better your health outcomes will be. So I figured the best way to help people is really to help increase their health literacy.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And right now there is a lot of confusion around what is good and what isn't good, and things in our food, and just things that maybe have been put in our food that shouldn't be in our food, and all of that kind of stuff. But and we can get to that, but I want to find out, because here you are interested and have a passion for giving people good information and the right information. And so one of the ways that you were able to do this, because I know you were at the University of Tulsa, but is by starting a podcast. And
Yeah.
so the Healthy Humor podcast, I love healthy and humor together. So I want you to share exactly why you decided, because you are a busy person, so why you decided to start a podcast and kind of what you have seen from that.
I think I decided to start the podcast just because I saw it as a good avenue to reach the most amount of people with the not I don't want to say the least amount of effort, but I had all these ideas of, how do I create an online learning system for increasing health literacy and training, not training, but just educating. And I was like, well, that's a lot. And that's stuff that will take years and years to develop. And then I said, but if I start a podcast, I could start that tomorrow and get that ball rolling, and then eventually do more, maybe to get in earlier into people's lives and do those earlier interventions. But the podcast really just kind of stuck out as the best avenue. They're popular right now. They reach the most amount of people. There's little overhead. It's something that I can do from the comfort of my home, or go out to people and meet them in their businesses or in their practices and interview them there. So I kind of love that. And then I just personally, going through some of the health things that I went through in my younger years, and I wouldn't have been able to get through that if it hadn't been for my mom. Part of the way she worked her way through her engineering degree from OSU was she worked, mostly overnight shifts at the Stillwater, or at the hospital in Stillwater. So she's kind of, before me, she was kind of like the resident health person in our family, even though she was a, respiratory tech in college. And that's not that was quite a few years back. And it wasn't like it was, she wasn't like a nurse or a doctor or something. I mean, as far as her contact, but she's still she was the person that my family had. Mm-hmm. And not every family has someone like that who can take what is a very confusing and often very scary system that we have to navigate as US citizens and make it less scary. Can we make it make more sense? Not necessarily, because some of the parts of it just don't make sense at all to even the people who understand them, but they can help you navigate. And I just wanted to be that person for some people, for as many people as I could, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it almost, because it is kind of confusing, it does take somebody a little more, with a little more knowledge, to be able to share information and, spread that information. Let me ask, because your background is so interesting in all of the different areas where you have had experience. So the podcast I know you're bringing, because you naturally do bring all of that experience to the table. But tell me why that's beneficial too, and the lens that you kind of are able to see things from.
I think it's beneficial because not having empathy and being able to see through the eyes of your fellow man is not something that everyone is born with.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're looking at healthcare, and this is what I teach my students, you have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of your patients. You have to be able to look at the situation critically and understand what barriers they are facing, because the majority of patients will not have the same background as their provider. I mean, it's the same thing. You don't have the same background as every person that you interview on this podcast. I don't have the same background as every person that I interview or every student I have.
Mm-hmm.
But our ability to take a step back from ourselves and our world and figure out what's going on in theirs and be compassionate towards them, that is something that comes with, some people are born with it, but for most of us, it comes with living a lot of life and a breadth of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been fortunate. I may not have always felt fortunate, but I've been very fortunate that I've been in situations where I have experienced a lot of breadth to my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the kind of thing that I run into often, especially with my students. The amount of life they've lived is like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it might be the same number of years as their classmate sitting right next to them, but their experiences are here and they have a classmate that's here.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for those who are just listening and don't get to see my hand gestures.
Yeah, I totally get that. So okay, let me ask about one of your podcasts that you referenced, and this is like a little mini episode, but it was the 10,000 steps. And
Yeah.
that's something that I've been working to try to be on top of, is getting steps in, because they say being sedentary is the same as smoking. Like they're equating it to, things that I think could be, I think smoking is terrible. I think I'm not sedentary, but equating both of those things are basically, it's detrimental to your health.
Mm-hmm.
But you talked about that, and so you kind of dispel common myths, and I wanted to ask you about that, because there are certain things that I think we're hearing about, whether it be the 10,000 steps or, being sedentary, that are myths. And so you kind of dispel that. So I'd like for you to talk a little bit about how you bring, maybe these myths into the forefront to dispel maybe what people are believing at this point.
Yeah. So that episode was, the 10,000 steps episode was really centered around dispelling myths. But something that I do even in my interviews with, I call them meet and greet episodes, where I am basically trying to introduce my listeners to whatever the profession of my guest is. Mm-hmm. And part of that is, what are common myths about your profession? Can you please, correct those for us right now? And that kind of stuff, because we have myths about everything. Mm-hmm. We have myths about, professions. We have myths about health in general, and people don't always know where to go to get the accurate information. And everything that I'm putting out there, I'm using peer-reviewed sources. That's where I'm pulling my information from, or I'm going directly to someone who is an expert in their field, because I want any information that I am putting out there to be as factual as I can possibly make it be. The problem is, in the society that we live in right now, where we have so many, influencers and people who they want to get their slice of the pie, they're going to put out whatever is the catchiest thing or whatever is going to get them the most views. That doesn't always mean it's the most accurate. Also, there are people who go out and they say they're an expert in something and they're not, right? They don't have the degrees to back it up. They don't have the education or the experience to back up what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I also try to work to dispel. And I talk to all of my students about it. I'm like, hey, look, go through all of the accounts that you follow, especially the health and wellness related accounts, and go Google whoever that content creator is and find out what their background is. Figure out if they have degrees in the stuff that they're talking about. Because I don't want to take health and nutrition advice from a philosophy major, right? I don't want to take, health information from someone who just graduated high school, right? Or their only frame of reference is, they did 10,000 steps every day for a whole year. And this is how it changed their bodies. And it's going to change your body in the same way too, because we just know that that's not how our bodies work, right? What works for yours isn't exactly what's going to work for mine. We're all different and we have to figure out what's going to work for us. But we also need to make sure we're getting our information from the right source.
You and I are so much the same because, so I don't know if you know, but I teach at Tulsa Community College.
I don't think I knew that.
So resources are huge for me, and credibility, because people,
Absolutely.
You're right. And I'm glad that you are having your students think about the background of the person they're following, because maybe that person is mixing up a shake and, telling them about something that is great. And it's really not something that they should be doing or have or whatever. And so, and I know it's also based on the person and what they're experiencing, but it's hard to speak to something when you don't have really a lot of background or depth or knowledge in it. And so I'm always looking into that kind of thing, but doing an audit and clearing out people who maybe are doing things because what is it? They have an affiliate link or, that kind of thing. And when they sell all that protein powder, they get a certain cut. And so anyway, but I do think it's important to know who you're following.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it's the same thing. Like, I don't want to go take a class from someone who shouldn't be teaching that class.
Right.
The first thing I do every semester, I'm sure you do the same thing. When you have syllabus day and you introduce yourself to your students, you tell them your background, you tell them your qualifications, and why you're a credible source and why they should listen to you.
Yes.
But the average, I'm just going to continue to use influencer as a term, but the average influencer, they're not doing that on a regular basis, or they're not making that information public. And to me, that sets off alarms. If you're not telling me why you're a credible source, you're most likely not going to be one, at least in my experience from what I've looked at on those influencers.
Right.
But the ones who tell you like, hey, I have this degree, they have that degree. You can go look it up.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let me ask, because I think people tend to stress out a little over their health. And your healthy humor, with the dose of health, the dose of humor makes it a little lighter, in talking about these different things that people are talking about. And so I'm just wondering how you are able to incorporate humor into, what you are sharing.
So the thing that's not written in my bio anywhere is that I was actually a theater kid growing up. And I actually turned down a very good theater scholarship whenever I went to TU, for some reasons that we don't need to get into, but I did. And I'm a happy person by nature. I'm a jovial person. I am very sarcastic at times and also very ornery at other times. I don't think it was possible for me to make a podcast and not have humor be part of it. And, healthy humor, it sounded great as a title. And then I thought about it and I was like, healthcare is this scary thing. And the whole reason I wanted to make this podcast was to make it less scary. Well, humor is going to help that, right?
Yeah.
Getting people to laugh. I talk about some serious things on the show. Like, I've done multiple episodes around bowel movements, because they can be really telling for what's going on inside your body. But I crack so many poop related jokes in those episodes and I love it. And I
Yeah.
try to be as lighthearted as I can, and make people as comfortable as I can. And I do the same thing in my classes, like a lot of times they're, self-deprecating jokes or me using whatever the newest slang is and catching them off guard or asking them a silly question and being like, just kidding, whatever it is. I just like to make people laugh, and I think it makes them more comfortable. It's very disarming, and it takes, again, this scary topic of healthcare and makes it just less scary and more accessible.
Mm-hmm. So I like that you have combined that, though, because I didn't know that that was your background in theater. And it's always interesting the path people take.
Mm-hmm.
When you talked about how you were in pre-med, and then, at the beginning of the top of the episode, you said that you had a conversation with somebody and it kind of changed your trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's always interesting where people are going and the decisions they make.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that you can incorporate the theater, the fun into this podcast, because you obviously have some talent. So that helps make it entertaining and, have people listening too. So has there been something that your students have asked you about from listening to the podcast, or something that has stuck out? Because you seem to be very open, and honest, and probably that way with your students, that they have enjoyed learning from the podcast.
Honestly, a lot of what I talk about on the podcast is stuff that I cover in class with them as well.
Okay.
I think what a lot of them have really enjoyed about the podcast is just that it's always enjoyable for students to see that their professors are still out there doing something, like I'm sure your students love that you have a podcast and that your whole life isn't wrapped around teaching them. They love to see that we're people. And I think for my students, part of it is they know how much I care about healthcare, not only because I have this podcast, but also because the way that I speak with them. And they see that mirrored in the podcast, and they know that whatever I'm talking about with them, that I'm coming from a place of genuine caring and passion for them and for the topic that we're discussing. And I think that that's just what they really like, is they don't feel like I'm burnt out on anything. They like that I do crack jokes, but that I am kind of part of this world that they're part of, right?
Yeah.
Because so much of their world is online. So seeing a professor that's kind of also navigating part of that with them, I think they love that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah.
Not to put words in their mouths, but
yeah,
I think that's fun.
I agree. No, my students, it's fun because I do have it as an assignment that they have to listen to one of the podcasts that I have shared, and just so they can get a taste of it. And it's a lot of people, who are following their passion, because I'm pushing that with them. Like it's a business class, but I really want them to be thoughtful in even the business that they work for, the company culture, where they're going to fit in, all of that kind of stuff. But I find them starting to listen to different episodes and asking me different questions about it. And so I think that they really enjoy it, and even recommending people for the podcast, so that makes it really fun.
Yeah. I recently learned a new term from some of my students, and I'm thinking about asking them to be on the show to talk about it.
What's the term?
Maxing.
Oh, great. I don't know what that is.
I mean, I didn't until they taught me. So they were referring to like sleep maxing, where the way I think about it is you're just trying to optimize whatever you're doing during that time.
Yeah.
So when they were talking about sleep maxing, it's like, if you have a skincare routine, you do that. And then you put on a sound machine and you wear an eye mask and you have an essential oil diffuser and you sleep in like an optimal position after bathing and having on fresh pajamas, and like just, you're basically trying to maximize the quality of the sleep that you're getting, even if you're only getting like 5 hours. This is, one of my students says that this is exactly why she's been able to only really get 5 hours of sleep most nights and still be, she's a rock star student. And I haven't looked to see if there's any science behind like any of the specific ones, because they also talk about hydration maxing, And then like studying, maxing,
Mhm.
and other things. I mean, basically you can max out on anything.
Mhm.
You're just trying to optimize it in the shortest amount of time possible.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to
Well,
talk to them about this.
yeah, I would be interested in hearing that episode because I would actually think, and I understand what they're talking about, but I do think there's a certain amount of sleep that you really have to get, before it becomes, I don't know, kind of detrimental.
Oh
You
yeah.
can only survive that long, or not very long, I think, on a little amount of sleep, but I don't know. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't looked it up either, so I don't know what it is, but we require a certain amount of sleep because when we go without sleep, I mean, prolonged sleep deprivation can kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Your
Mm-hmm.
body has to recharge. We're not the
Mm-hmm.
Energizer Bunny.
Right. Oh yeah. 100%. And I need more sleep than probably most, MB. I'm in bed at 8:30, but anyway.
Well, okay, that is one thing that I do know. Women do need more sleep.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, it's a fact?
Yes. That's a
Okay.
fact. Women need more sleep.
Okay.
So if you look at like whatever stage of life you're in, your sleep needs change.
Yeah.
And this is across averages. Sleep needs change as you get older. For the most part, you can get away with less sleep as you get older. It's not as needed because your body's not going through the same, high speed, not really high speed, but physiological processes. It's not doing quite as much as it did when you were younger. You're certainly done growing, things like that. But on average, women need about an hour more sleep at any of those stages.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. I can totally relate to that. My husband definitely doesn't need as much sleep as I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Good to know. And it's
Yeah.
research backed. I like that.
Right. Exactly.
So this past weekend, I didn't get a lot of sleep. I'll tell you. My daughter was a bridesmaid in a wedding. Her
That's
good
so
friend got
lovely.
married, and we were in Mineral Wells, Texas, this tiny little town. Well, it was a fairly mid-size wedding, and
Mhm.
so we got to meet a lot of the people all weekend in this little town. We'd run into people, but I was talking to this couple and I was asking them about what they're doing as empty nesters.
Mhm.
And it was funny because what they shared with me, I found this very interesting. She said that they have been able to lose together cumulatively 110 pounds, and they have bought an RV and they are traveling around the United States. And she said that they would not be able to do what they're doing had they not lost this weight. And so they're going and they're parking their RV and they're hiking and doing these pretty lengthy hikes. And she talked about how she's started teaching Zumba, and like her whole outlook has changed on her life and the way she's living, even when they're at home.
Uh-huh.
And she wants to maximize her health. But she said for years, she put her health on the back burner and she didn't even know exactly how to get started. And then her friend told her to sign up for a Zumba class. And so she did. So the reason why I'm saying all of that is because there are so many people who do want to do something with their health. They want to start something. Maybe they're not in the healthiest position. And so I thought I would love for you to maybe speak to what people can do if they're starting from scratch and haven't done a lot, and maybe want to start to live a healthier lifestyle. Maybe the top two things you would share that would maybe help them.
I think, you can't really narrow it down super easily, and everyone's life is so different. But, you mentioned this at the beginning of the episode that, a sedentary lifestyle and trying to not be sedentary and be as active as possible. That's the number one thing. Even if, I'm not saying, like, if you're getting 2,000 steps a day right now, don't try to go out tomorrow and start getting 10,000 steps a day every day. Also, because that's just an arbitrary number that was picked, and that doesn't need to be our goal. It can be our goal. That's a great goal. But the science that backs up that number isn't quite there. The health benefits do go up the more steps we get, but just movement in general, because the American lifestyle is a pretty sedentary lifestyle, but also so is the modern lifestyle, right? I mean, what's the main thing that people do? They go to work, so they sit in a car or on a bus or a subway, right? So they're sitting on their way to work for the most part. They get into work and they have a big old cup of coffee, and then they sit at a computer for the most part for 8 hours a day. And then they sit on that same transit ride home, whether they're driving themselves or not. And then they get home. Maybe they make a healthy dinner. Maybe they go to the gym and they get, a nice solid workout in, and they ate a healthy meal, and most of their food throughout the day was healthy. But then what do they do when they're done working out? When it's dark, it's the evening time. Most likely they're going to sit and watch TV, or they're going to sit and read, or whatever their activity is, it's still a sedentary activity. And I mean, without even tracking your steps, if you just say, hey, when I go to the grocery store, instead of trying to circle the parking lot a million times to find the closest spot, I'm going to park in the back corner. I'm going to go park in the back 40 and walk my butt to the store. Even just that, the amount of steps that and activity that can add to your day. And obviously we're not going to the grocery store every day. So where else can we add steps, right? I know people they don't like hearing this, and the stairs are not always an option, but taking the stairs rather than taking the elevator, or, I make sure that at least, even if I'm, in a heavy grading session or planning session or something like that, and I am going to have a pretty sedentary day, I make sure that I still get up and I go take a lap around my building or around campus at least once an hour.
Gosh.
And aside from, it can be distracting to your work. I give that one. But just the little things that you can do to add in extra movement throughout your day, that's going to be the first huge thing that people can do to help improve their health. And then the second thing I would say is go to the doctor. Get a checkup, because aside from the fact that really we shouldn't be trying to make any lifestyle changes without seeking the guidance from a physician, we should go on a regular basis anyway, just to have baseline metrics for, blood pressure, heart rate, weight, height, things like that. And I know that that's not always accessible to everybody, right? Like they might not have insurance, or it's just really hard to get in to see a primary care provider sometimes. Your schedule may not allow it. Your work might not allow it. I understand that. But if you can, get in to see a physician. Get someone who knows what they're talking about and get them to check on you. And if you don't like your primary care provider, find a new one.
Good advice. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just find a new one.
Yeah. Just do it.
Yeah.
Stop talking about it and do it. Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been a great conversation, and I am so glad that you shared some practical tips too, because just even like you said, parking further away and allowing the time, maybe you allow 10 extra minutes for that grocery store run because you're walking in and walking out, and getting that movement in where you can. I think that's great. So anyway.
Well, and I just want to say one more thing. On that. Those little things, they really don't add that much time to your day if you do them in the right way.
Okay.
So like a great example for me is I can park in 2 different places on campus. There's one it's basically the opposite side of campus from where my building is. And then the other one is right next to my building. I park in the one that's further away. I used to think that it took me 10 minutes to walk to my office. It takes me 3.5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And same thing, like if you park in the corner of the parking lot at the grocery store versus the closest possible spot, it's maybe adding 60 seconds from the time you get out of your car to the time you get in the door.
Yeah.
Versus the, 20 or 15 seconds it might take you normally.
Yeah.
So it's not adding that much to your day, but it's adding a lot to your health. And then it changes your mentality around it, and you start just doing that all the time. All right. Like I look at, we're possibly going to be looking at a new house in the next year or so. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot is walkability of the area. You know, it's a big thing for us, is wanting to be a walkable distance to things, but also our definition of a walkable distance is not the same as the average person that we talk to.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it is because we've changed our mindset around movement and what movement is. Because again, US culture is a very sedentary culture. We have this expectation that you drive and that you have a car, right? That's a metric of success. But walking and having a healthy body and a healthy life, to me, that's a much better metric of success. So,
yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I am with you. Yep. So I'll have you over to my house sometime, because you should move into my neighborhood. So we have this house for walkability. And so we can walk to different things. And we actually, my husband and I walked to breakfast this morning and walked back. So anyway, I love it. I am with you 100%. Well, this conversation has been so fun. I appreciate you so much sharing with people about the Healthy Humor podcast, about what you're about. So now they know who you are. So tell us how we can find you online.
I do have a website, healthy-humor.com, but I also I have Instagram for the podcast, and then the podcast is available anywhere that you can stream a podcast.
Okay.
The majority of my listeners come through Spotify and Apple Music.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Spotify. Yeah, that's funny. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you again for talking to me. It's been awesome. Thank you, Doc MB.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I appreciate you being here. And don't forget to connect with me on social media. Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn are at Sharing Passion and Purpose, and Twitter is at Passion Sharing. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.